In this multidimensional world, much of which is invisible to the eye, a group of non-physical entities have come here to expand our knowledge of how the universe works. These non-physical teachers are called Joshua, and they convey their teaching through Gary Temple Bodley. Each week, Gary, with a selection of law of attraction experts, open up a roundtable of thought-provoking discussions surrounding the teachings of Joshua. Joshua's intention is to bring clarity to the listeners through the ever-expanding law of attraction by looking at reality from a new perspective. Welcome to the teachings of Joshua Roundtable.
Hello everyone, this is episode 20 of the Teachings of Joshua Roundtable. I'm your host, Gary Temple Bodley. Today is February 20th, 2016. This week I went to the funeral of a friend of mine, and my mother-in-law died. So I thought it might be a good week to talk about death. This is a subject that everyone is interested in because we're all going to die. Joshua gets questions about death every week. It's always the same. What happens when loved ones die, and what happens when we die? Joshua has talked a lot about this issue. I'm pretty sure your view on death will be quite different by the end of this episode. On the roundtable today, we have Steve Finizza. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Gary.
And Michael Kutzen. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Gary.
Glad you're with us. Janine is taking a week off, but we'll hopefully see her again next week. So this is a fun subject to talk about, but it really is fun. It's not a bad subject. And by the end of this episode, I think we're all going to view it a lot differently than we may have in the past. Since I've been channeling Joshua, my view about death has completely turned 180 degrees, where before I was, nervous and scared and saddened when people died. And now I see it more as a celebration. It's just a transition from physical back to non-physical. So the physical is like our playground and non-physical is our home. So you go to play the playground for a while. Pretty soon you get bored of the playground. You go back home and then you come again another day. And that's basically what death is. Let's start off talking about the quote of the week. And Michael, can you read that for us?
My pleasure. You are an eternal being who has lived countless lives. This is true. That is true of everyone you know. You are eternal. That means that there is no death as you understand it. Joshua.
Right. It's just a transition from one state of being to another state of being. So Joshua talks about these three fears that are involved in the fear of death. And that is the fear of change, the fear of loss, and the fear of separation. But there is none of this. And when we go into our question, actually, that we'll talk more about it as well. I was talking to you guys earlier that I've been to 4 funerals in my life. And the first 2 were in my 20s. They were my friends' parents. I didn't know either of them. And I remember being very sad, and I'm an emotional person, and I probably teared up, even though I didn't know the people at all. Then about 2 years ago, a friend's sister's husband died and he was young, maybe in his 50s or so, in an auto accident. And I had been, involved in Abraham and just starting Joshua. And so Lily and I went to that funeral, and even though we didn't know the person, but we knew almost all the people who were there at the funeral, they were all, of course, crying like people do. And that was the first time I really noticed that I wasn't crying or sad about it. I was really understanding that it was just a transition to another form of being. And then this week went to the funeral of a friend, and he died of cancer at 60, was a really nice, fun guy. And I wasn't sad at all, nor was Lily. But of course it was, it was a tearjerker kind of funeral too. One of those ones where people get up and talk. So I think that when you can really understand what death is, that it just changes, you just respond completely different to it. And it's a wonderful thing. I mean, who wants to be sad about something that's inevitable or worry about it in any way? What do you guys think?
I think that it's I had a recent funeral I had to go. Well, it's been a few months now, but it feels recent, where a close friend died, and I could feel the shift in perception, how it affected my feelings so greatly. Because when I was rooted, what I call rooted in physical reality here, and feeling the separation and loss of her, feeling like she was gone, overwhelming sadness, right, and
Yeah.
crying. But in the next minute, I could shift and realize that, okay, it's just different. It's not that she's gone. It's different. She's actually still here and aware and all that. And I could actually get to the place where I would smile and chuckle and laugh. And I would. What was weird was I could flip flop back and forth between those two perspectives so quickly and
Uh-huh.
feel so different. I mean,
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah. And that was someone pretty close to you.
Yes, yeah, we were. It was the. It's interesting. I'd never had anyone in my life that was that close to me pass. So
Right.
it kind of shed a whole nother, light on it for me.
And who was that?
Her name was Sherry. She was.
Yeah. So Sherry wrote questions to Joshua.
Yes, and we went through the whole cancer thing with her and that whole roller coaster ride.
Yeah. And so, do you think that as she was able to talk about it to Joshua and ask questions, that did that help her?
Oh, I can't even tell you how much it helped her. That was one of the most satisfying things of my life, was that when she was diagnosed with cancer, I got the nerve to kind of come out with this whole weird Joshua Abraham thing, and I gave her your book, and she not only did she come to this place of peace, I would call it, but her husband was very thankful also
Oh, wow,
for
that's
that.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really
and
cool.
originally they were kind of, I would say, not supportive of the book, because
Yeah.
it is different, and you can read it. When you read that you create your own reality, you can look at it like I was blaming her for her own cancer, right?
Right.
And so all that brought up some emotions.
Sure. Yeah,
Well,
it's a double-edged sword there. You get to understand about reality, and that some of it's comforting, and the other part is, boy, if you had learned this stuff, maybe things would be different. But I don't know if that's really true because everything sort of unfolds as it unfolds for a reason.
Yeah, it's like we forget that. I think as we learn the spirituality stuff, we forget that we deliberately come here and forget that we know all this stuff,
Hmm.
probably for a reason, because we can get into it a lot more and
Yeah.
feel more intense emotions. Because if you knew you were eternal and none of this really mattered, you might not take it seriously.
Right. It's Joshua has said that you live so many lives that each life is like a day in this life. So that puts it all in perspective. So when you wake up in the morning, that day is like a whole life, and you can do whatever you want with it. And this whole life is like one day in a big cosmic scheme of things.
Yeah, so you wouldn't take it near as serious.
You would never take it right. But maybe I think a lot of Joshua's teachings is that you don't need to take it serious either. That I mean, on one hand, Joshua talks about really getting the most out of experience of life and not playing it safe and not seeking comfort all the time. And then the other hand is not to take it so seriously as well. So
I think there's a
there's a balance
balance.
there,
Yeah.
right? All right, well, let's get on to the question. The question is lighthearted because it's not about a person, it's about a pet. But I think for me, if my Rocky died, I would be, you know, as upset as anyone in the world dying.
what kind of a dog is Rocky?
Rocky is a long-haired Chihuahua. He's right here, laying next to me in his bed. Hi, Rocky.
It's funny when you say Rocky. I think of
You
some.
think of a
I
big
thought
Doberman.
I thought yeah. I thought it was going to be a German Shepherd or a
I
pink
had
or a,
two German Shepherds, and they were both named Rocky. So when this Rocky came along, I said, "Well, that's a Rocky too.
no. It's a Rocky 3.
Do you,
It's a Rocky also."
do you,
Yeah.
do you wonder if it's the same Rocky just coming back in different forms?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's a different energy altogether.
Oh,
than the other two Rockies. Yeah.
that's cool.
Yep.
That is very cool.
My friend's dog, who we just bonded and like nothing else. Like I'll go over to their house and Ginger will come to me over anyone in the family and just be with me the whole time and never leave my side. And we have this like love affair. It's just the weirdest thing. It's like someone totally that I'm connected with is in that dog.
Well, let me just go on that for a moment. I had a dog years ago. His name was Boo Boo. He was a shepherd beagle mutt, and he loved me. But when my father, when my parents came to visit, or we went to visit my parents,
Uh huh.
and he saw my father, he forgot everybody in the universe, went nuts,
Yeah.
barking away, jumping into his lap. He literally, one time, when my father was pulling up in the car, jumped through my father's window into the car, into his lap. And you've got to imagine the size of this dog jumping onto
Yeah.
my father while he's driving and wouldn't leave him alone, licking him, kissing him, like
Yeah.
wagging his tail, where it was the funniest thing in creation. He had an extreme connection with my father.
That's funny, isn't it? Yeah,
And then
Ginger.
then
Well,
eventually I wound up moving into my current wife, my current longtime and better be forever wife's, apartment,
uh,
right before we were about to get married in Manhattan, when we tried to hide Boo Boo
uh,
in the apartment complex. That worked for all of 5 minutes,
uh,
and he had, it was basically we were told it was either him or us. So Boo Boo wound up retiring with my parents out in Zeep, Suffolk County, where he lived his life in bliss with my father, with the true love of his life.
that's great. Yeah. Yeah, when I go over there, Ginger will walk me around with my hand in her mouth, just ever so delicately, and just walk me around and show me things, and it's so funny. Um, okay, so let's go ahead and read. Michael, will you read the question for Tasha?
Of course. Dear Joshua, I'm not sure if I can get help on this issue, but I'd like to try. My beloved dog passed away yesterday, and I'm missing him terribly. I feel like I get it that there is another place level that our souls all go to once we leave the physical. I guess I'm wondering a couple of things. First, will our souls meet again once I leave the physical? Do animal and human souls get to reunite at some point? I'm almost afraid to ask that question, as I hope very much that we do. My next question is, did he choose the style of death that took him from us suddenly yesterday? He was seemingly healthy, although slowing down a bit. But did he decide on some level that he had enough and needed to get back to where he came from? I imagine that he and my other dog are together now, running free wherever it is that they have gone. Is this what really happens? Is he free and happy now? And finally, can he visit us if he chooses? In other words, are they able to be nearer to us if they choose to check in? I miss him terribly, and am grieving, and would love to hear any thoughts you can share on the matter. Thank you so much, Tasha.
Okay, so that's pretty much the standard question about death. And Steve, would you read Tasha's answer from Joshua?
Sure will. Dear Tasha, there are three things that you believe to be true that are not. They are death, loss, and separation. Living beings cannot die, for they are eternal. There is no death, simply the transition from this physical realm that seems so real to the non-physical realm, which is real. There is no loss, for you cannot lose one you have come to know. You are eternally bonded with everyone you know, and that includes all the animals you have ever known. There is no separation, for you are eternally bonded, and whether you can observe your dog with your physical senses or not, your dog is with you at all times. Whenever you think of him, he is there.
Okay, so those are the three fears. Fear of death is really the fear of change, fear of loss, and fear of separation. So the non-physical exists all around us. It's just that our five physical senses are so in our face that we don't have the sixth sense, which is intuition, I guess, what you call it, which is the ability to feel for other people there who are around you. And because you're so focused on, the reality of the illusion of reality, you're not really thinking about this other side of it, which is the non-physical. But you can, when you when you think of your dog, or you can you can communicate with your dog now by just asking questions and getting thoughts, and those thoughts will be the answers. And that's true of everyone who's ever died. You can do that with anyone you want. And it's pretty much everyone. When Sherry died, I totally felt her, and I could just think of her. And what I got really strongly was her just being very exuberant and alive and dancing, jumping and dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I thought of my mother-in-law, she was surrounded by her 2 dogs and maybe 3 dogs and friends and family and all that stuff too, and very peaceful. And when she was alive, she smoked and drank every day of her life until she was 80 something.
Oh God!
Had a lot of friends, a lot of parties, but she was very, very critical. And now she's very calm and almost quiet. So it's a lot different. She was putting on this act when she was here out of insecurity, and now the real her shows through. And that's what happens when you die is you strip away all the fear-based attributes of your personality, and what remains is who you really are. And that's why Joshua says your real goal in life is to strip away those fears and become who you really are.
And who we really are at the end of the day is love.
We are beings of pure positive love.
Right.
Everyone is. So,
yeah.
As long as you're working towards that.
Right. And I believe that we can talk to the departed, the dead, so to speak. Although they're not really dead. They're just in a different dimension, a different place.
It's like we're in a dream, and they're awake. That's sort of how it is. This is almost like a dream state, but the real reality is the non-physical. However, this is where all the action is, and everyone's focused here. There's a law of continuity, too, which says that one moment continues into the next moment. When you leave this reality, you'll transition into the non-physical reality, which will appear similar in the beginning, and what you're interested in here, you're going to be interested in there, too. And so you'll still not check in, but see, in non-physical, you can be at multiple places at the same time. So you can be with everyone at the same time, all the time. And your focus can be focused on, in physical reality, you really can only focus at one thing at a time. But non-physical, you can focus on multiple things. So you're always with everyone all the time. And everyone is with you too. And I think that includes, people's inner beings and inner selves and stuff as well. So there's a lot to it.
It's a positive form of ADD.
Yeah, it's a positive form of ADD, exactly.
and I've always
ADD that works. Yeah.
What
exactly.
What I've noticed since Sherry passed is that like at night, whenever I wake up for whatever reason, it seems like she's there, right? It's just like because you're quiet, you're in a state where I think you're more in tune to subtle energies or whatever.
Right.
And I've just started wondering. I go like, isn't there something that she would be like? Isn't she getting bored? It's kind of like,
yeah.
And is it really that? So I guess I'm just touching off what you said, how they can be everywhere. Yeah. And that's just a different way of thinking. So I'm glad she's there.
There's much more to it than we can comprehend. But
they're not on clouds playing harps and just.
Right.
Or as Joseph Campbell was once quoted, I remember on his series with Bill Moyers years ago, he said, he was asked about what did he think would happen to him, and he was actually an agnostic. He said, or an atheist. He said nothing. Yeah. And he said, I can't imagine just floating around in space staring at God all, for eternity.
Yeah, that's definitely what you do not do.
Right.
You do not worship a God. You are God. You're part of it. You don't feel separated from God. But you can't be bored either because boredom is a fear-based lower vibration that you don't have access to, which is interesting. And I guess you only get bored because of the concept of time. So if there was no time, you couldn't get bored because without time, like boredom only counts because you're waiting for the next thing to happen.
Right.
In the future. Yeah,
Right.
that's
It was
interesting. That's the one thing that I'm thinking too. Boy, wouldn't you get bored?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, let's go on. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was just about to say, to me, boredom, the quintessential memory of boredom to me was going to the family when I was a little kid. And when I say family, I mean the extended family, people who I barely knew. And I was a kid and there was nothing to do. And I was, when I remember counting the minutes until I could do something fun.
Me too. And now kids don't get bored because their focus of attention can go to their phone, which gives them access to so much interesting stuff going on. So that's probably how it is in non-physical. It's not possible to get bored because there's so much interesting stuff going on.
Right.
But one thing about non-physical, you don't get the same experience of reality. Obviously, you can be a voyeur and watch it, but you're not really feeling it like we feel it now, and that's why physical reality is so exciting.
Yeah, it's like living it versus reading a book about it, or
Right, or
watching a
watching
movie
a
about
movie.
it.
Yeah,
Right. Although there are certain times I'd rather be reading the book.
definitely.
Well, that's what you say now, but
Roots. I don't want to be living Roots. I'll read the book, but I don't want to be living it. Or the Titanic. Yeah,
I think from your non-physical perspective, you'd say, "Hey, that looks exciting."
yeah,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah, because after 1,000 of these things,
Steve, you really have picked this up beautifully.
I'm just saying, after thousands and thousands of lifetime, you're going to say, "I need to mix it up a bit. This has just been too easy."
Right. Yeah. So when I was in back pain this week, I brought my as my physical body was saying, "You idiot! You twisted the wrong way at the gym." My non-physical body was saying, "Yeah, right on."
Well, your non-physical body was saying it has nothing to do with the gym.
Yes.
It's a manifestation
Right.
of your thoughts. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, that's good. We got through one paragraph.
Okay,
20 minutes.
we got plenty of time.
We do.
Wait.
Okay.
When you make your transition to the non-physical, your dog will be there to greet you. You will be able to communicate with your dog in ways you cannot imagine. However, you need not wait. You can communicate with him now if you'd like. You can think of him and ask him how he is, what he's doing, and who he's with. All of these answers will come to you in the form of thoughts. They may feel like your thoughts, but they are his thoughts. And this is how you can communicate.
Right. So when I receive Joshua, it feels like they're my thoughts because it is my thoughts, right? Thoughts are thoughts. It's in my head, and the thoughts aren't any different. They're not like a different voice or anything. They're my thoughts. And you might not notice that these thoughts are being given to you by those you're thinking about who have died, because it seems like they're your thoughts. And if it wasn't for the feeling of the presence in my body as I was meditating, I would have just assumed these were my thoughts. I would never have sat down to write anything or write a book or any of that stuff, because it was just, they come and go, right? But as I've meditated and then learned to focus this, I can have conversations and I can easily write the thoughts down. But it's just a practice like anything else. And one of the biggest things Joshua is always saying is that those who die, you do not need to be separated, and you can communicate with them as much as you want. They won't interfere or intervene in your life unless you're willing for them to do so. So I think when people get to really understand this and aren't afraid of it and practice with it, you can get really good at it. But nobody really knows that this is how it works. But this is supposed to be how it works. You're not supposed to be separated.
But let me ask you this, Gary. What happened? There are people out there who feel very guilty that they didn't visit somebody at the end of their lives, that they didn't treat them right, or they were fighting with them, or whatever. And some people are necessarily going to be guilt and fear ridden. And when they just, when they have the thoughts of this person, they may have very negative thoughts that the person really has it out for them. And I think we all know that that's not the case.
Right.
But how do we separate out in those cases? It's again, how can somebody in that situation separate out their thoughts from what really are the thoughts of, of the universe or the person who who has in fact passed away?
Well, you can, when you ask a question and the thought that comes back, that's the other person communicating with you, and you're not going to have that negative thought. Also, it's helpful to think of the person who's passed on, as if they've shed all of the stuff that would have gotten you into an argument with them anyway. They're all of those ticky-tack personality traits that are based in fear are gone. And so what's left is who the person really is. So when someone dies, that's what in that one article that everyone goes to heaven, even Hitler. When they say that Hitler goes to heaven, you wouldn't recognize Hitler. It's a completely different person, because Hitler was created from fear, and so any attribute that anyone has that's based in fear just fades away. So that's how you sort of have to think of the person now, is that they have no judgment in the non-physical at all. So, even if you kept a secret from someone who died, they don't care about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pure positive beings of love. So they love you unconditionally. There's nothing you can do to upset them once they're in the non-physical. And I think once people start to think about that aspect of it, then it becomes easier to talk to people who have passed on.
I
Right.
would just throw in there real fast. You mentioned Hitler. There's a YouTube channel called Channeling Eric, and
Yeah.
she does an interview with Hitler, which this sounds a bit far fetched, but after you hear it, you're like, I thought it was real. I actually did. So
What's it called again, Steve?
it's the channel's called Channeling Eric with a K,
Right.
and it's a channel where a mom started it when her son committed suicide, and then after she connected with him, he kind of brings on guests.
Right.
Wow.
And they have a bunch of different ones, but the Hitler interview was quite interesting. And how
Do you remember anything that stood out on that interview?
Well, what stood out was his he had a special role. It was like there's a lot of the other people they interview on the other side have many lifetimes, and it was like Hitler. It wasn't. It was like he came in for this one big thing, and there was a purpose for it.
Right.
The purpose was to bring the world, to shift the world, I guess.
Right. And we've talked about that.
Yeah.
I listened to the one with the San Bernardino terrorists, and they said that too was also everything was planned in that before their birth, and it was also designed to bring people closer together as well.
Yeah, and
Wow.
Hitler had his demeanor was very interesting. You'd have to watch it, I think, to have that come across. But
Yep.
but it's an advanced topic. Let's just say that.
In the San Bernardino terrorist one, it's the woman talks almost all, and the man is in the background and doesn't really say anything.
Yeah, almost like he was embarrassed or something along those lines. I
Or
know
she
that's
was
not
just sort of
possible.
in charge or whatever. But they were talking about now, because they're in the non-physical with the victims, and so do they have any animosity? Do the victims have animosity? And they're saying you just can't hold on to things like that. It just doesn't work. It's like slips away. If you had any animosity, you couldn't hold it long enough for it to mean anything.
And you probably have the higher perspective where you see why in the bigger picture this happened.
Absolutely.
And one
Right.
lifetime was one day. So
Yep. Yep.
well, yeah.
Right. Well, and also there's the general. Excuse me. There's it's something we've talked about before, that the victims they so-called victims themselves had a particular purpose.
They were absolutely. They were, they were part of the whole play of it all. Okay,
Right.
let's go on to the next paragraph.
All beings choose when to make their transition to the non-physical.
Okay, so that just talks about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If someone dies in a terrorist attack, everyone plays a role in that.
All death is a suicide.
Right.
The method by which one makes their transition is not so important. It is usually the method of least resistance from the non-physical point of view. Those who transition quickly have less resistance. Those who linger need more time to resolve their resistance. Either way, it is always the choice of the individual.
My secretary's mother was a raging alcoholic, and she was driving to the liquor store at 9 o'clock at night, and she drove home on this street, to her house, which is about 35 miles an hour, and it has a slight bend to it, not a hairpin turn at all. But anyway, she goes off the road and hits like the monument that says what the name of the development at 35 miles an hour, and is killed instantly. It's like, that is an obvious suicide. This is just the easy way to go. She wasn't happy with life, and it's almost like watching Dale Earnhardt. That's the only Daytona 500 I ever watched all the way through. And when he hits this wall, it hits it so softly. It's like, geez, you think the car could even go on after that? It was just, when people go, they just go. And those who linger, on and on and on, are just not ready to go. They're just trying to stay here because they're afraid of death, or they're afraid of leaving people behind.
Or it gives the people around them a chance to adapt to their growing.
There's a lot of purposes to it, right?
Yeah.
You can have this disease and it'll take years to kill you, but by the time you actually do die, people will be relieved, and if you care about the people around you, that might be a good way to go.
Yeah, we see that all the time in my practice, where there are some people who can't let go and they hang on. And when I say the people, I'm talking about the surviving people, the family members. But there are other times where people have been suffering with Alzheimer's for years, or when have been in a nursing home and have are not the people that they knew growing up, or they've lingered with cancer for a very long time, and by the time the person finally passes away, it's a relief for the families, at least some of the families.
Yep.
And it's not heartlessness. If it's in fact a sense, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time, and it's got to be better than what everyone was going through before, and that's even without an enlightened view of what death is.
You look at animals in nature, and they just come and go really easily. No big deal. There's no big, long disease in the wild. But your pets are influenced by you just the way the people are. And so the pets can, get cancer and things like that, and try and stay around longer for you, that sort of thing.
Right. Well, in the wild, as soon as an animal is sick, it gets eaten.
Well, as soon as it's ready to go. It doesn't even have to be sick. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I mean, young animals get eaten all the time because it's, just like we had said before, young humans die a lot too because it's, it's a very dense kind of physical reality is tough to get used to. And that's why the survival instinct is so important. Otherwise, everyone would just tip their toe in the water and leave.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, all death is suicide. But no matter what, it's always the choice of the individual. And I've heard other things too. Josh hasn't really talked about it, but where, if you're dying and you don't want to die, you can, change things in the middle. And I guess that's how people come back from death. Okay, let's go on to the next one.
This is the last paragraph. There is a universal law called the law of continuity. This law states that when you love in the physical, what you love in the physical carries forth into the non-physical. You are tied to the things you love. When one transcends to the non-physical, one still maintains close ties to everything they loved in the physical realm. That means that your dog is with you now, and in every moment, watching you live your life and fully supporting you every step of the way. Your dog and all those you've loved who have transitioned, as well as countless others, are supporting you and keenly aware of you. There is no separation. That is why we say you are loved more than you can imagine by more than you could ever count. Joshua.
Yeah, so there are countless non-physical entities with us all the time, supporting us and loving us all the way through. So that's an interesting thing to think of. When there was a game where Brett Favre's father had died that week, and he decided to play this game, and he played the best game of his whole career that time. It was some amazing Monday Night Football game.
I remember watching that.
Yeah, it was unbelievable the stuff he did, and I mean, I think it was like 500 yards or something passing. It was just incredible.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you can see that a lot of times when people die, um, that time period, people do amazing things because they're thinking about the person in the non-physical. They're tuned into the non-physical more than usual. They're allowing energy to flow more than usual. There's something to all this stuff. You know.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That just happened on the live production of Grease. The actress who played oh Lord, Rizzo, Vanessa Hudgens. Her father died within less than 24 hours before she went on stage live in front of millions of people.
Wow.
And they said I didn't see it. I'm not a Grease fan. Yeah, and yes, you can send all the nasty emails to Gary, who'll then forward them to me. Yeah, my family watched it. I could give a damn about Grease and about greasers and about doo-wop music and everything else. Have no taste for it whatsoever. Having said that, I've read and I understand from my family and everybody else that Vanessa Hudgens gave an absolutely knockout performance, a career-making performance, and it was within 24 hours of her father dying.
Yeah, that stuff happens all the time. So, in fact, last night, I knew that I was going to win this tournament last night because I knew that Norma was going to be with me. And so I'm just watching these cards unfold and these situations come up. I go, yeah, I knew this was going to win. I knew this was going to win. And I had half the chips in the play by the time we got to the final table and just knocked everyone off. Boom, 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 boom. It was like the easiest thing that ever happened.
How many people in this tournament?
119.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible. Yep.
They're going to get onto your gig here, and they're going to say,
one of the guys Googled me, and so he spent time. I don't know if I told you the story before, but he goes, "Dude, I didn't know you were this smart." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, I Googled you, and I spent like an hour on the website just reading everything and looking at the books and stuff." And I said, "Yeah, well, it's not me." He goes, "Well, don't even talk to me about that stuff. Don't even talk to me." And so last night, at the first break, I have just this mountain of chips, and I'm like, he goes, I go, "Mike, look at my chips." And he goes, I know. There's puppet masters in the sky."
There we go.
Yeah, so he knows. Yeah, but I have to pay attention at the table that there's non-physical stuff going on, and I have to use my intuition to tune into it. And when I do, I can know if my hand is going to be good. Pre-flop, pre-everything.
So you get like a 4-9 offsuit, and you get a feeling to play it, and you stay in?
Yeah, I stay in. Exactly. And it's hard because it's such bad opening cards. And then sometimes, a lot of times, I'll get pocket aces, and I'll be like, danger, danger, danger. And I just wait to see the danger. It happened last night, too. So I had pocket kings. I flapped a king. It was all diamonds. And I'm like, even when I saw the pocket kings, before anything, I go, I feel danger. And I'm going to let's see how this plays out. And of course, a guy with the ace of diamonds went all in, and I couldn't help but call him, but I had a lot of chips. And he gets another diamond on the turn and has a flush, right?
Well, you
so I know, I knew. And I tell you all the time, I knew.
Well, you had a chance for a full house, right?
Yes, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. I knew that this wasn't going to work out. So when I can get to that point where I can fold a set of kings on the flop, that'll be something. Especially if I fold it face up.
So it's really a question of tuning, of quieting your mind, quieting the logical mind and tuning in.
Being aware that this whole other half of reality exists, and that's just the non-physical reality that you're supposed to be able to sense with your intuition, that nobody uses that sense, and that sense isn't being practiced enough, and because people aren't aware of it, right? So if you had a sense of something that you never used, if you never used the sense of smell, and no one ever talked about smelling things, and you couldn't smell things, or or maybe you smelled it slightly, but not really, you wouldn't think that you could practice improving that sense, but you can, and it's super subtle. It's if you can compare it to any of the other physical senses, which are obvious, the sense of intuition is super subtle. I got a question this week from this woman who sense of intuition is so unbelievable that her sister, who lived 1,100 miles away, was in a car crash. Well, what happened was this woman who wrote this letter was at her desk and felt like she was getting hit from the side and lifted her hand up to protect her face right at her desk and felt it so in her body. Then she comes to find out like 12 hours later that her sister, who lives 1,100 miles an hour, at that same moment was in a car crash and died from it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was, and she's had this in all kinds of situations her whole life, but she's always been afraid of it because when she really notices it, it's always from a tragedy or from some danger. And so she never thought that was a good sense. And so what Joshua said, that if you only saw, things that were horrific, you would think that sight was not a gift. But intuition is a gift, and you just need to practice using it all the time, and you will start to see the truth of things and the truth of people and places and things. It was pretty interesting.
That is interesting. At some
Yeah.
point, we should do a whole show on intuition.
Yeah, definitely.
I had the morning that Sherry died. She died like 8 o'clock or 7 something in the morning, and I didn't get the call till noon. But that morning, I had taken my Ducati to work, and I had the strangest feeling the whole time I was going to work that I couldn't describe. It was something rather unique, and to me, it felt like I was being GoPro'd. Is the way I just
Oh,
phrased it in the morning. But I felt like I was like I went. There were times when I went. I go fast sometimes on my own, right? But this was like I was being encouraged to go fast, and in hindsight, what it felt like to me is that Sherry was just having a great time with me going to work with
yeah.
me on that bike and experiencing my feelings, right?
So was
And
she inspiring you to go faster?
well, it was almost exactly like that. Like somebody was like going on the back, going, "Go for it, just go for it, And and usually, I don't need much encouragement, so that was okay.
Right.
But it was definitely from outside of me is
Wow.
what was weird. And I remember going to work, going, "What was that all about?" And and I couldn't explain it until later when I found out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we had my wife's former boss had a very interesting situation with a death in his family. He was heading into work. He lived on Long Island. He was heading into Manhattan, and his mother had been ailing for quite some time. When it was early in the morning, and he had a car phone. He gets a call from his wife. His wife says, "Your mother, turn around. Your mother just died." He turned around. That morning, he was heading into Two World Trade.
Yeah.
It was 9/11.
Right. Yeah. I heard so many stories like that for so many weird reasons that people didn't go to work on that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a very close friend who worked, who was a stockbroker, and said he was headed in that direction, and something got canceled and didn't go.
Right.
Uh,
I heard that.
But there was a situation. You have a situation. The mother, I believe the mother hung on to make
Long
sure
enough.
that the son, and left at just the right time so that the
Yeah.
son wasn't in the towers that morning.
Right. It's amazing. There's all kinds of stuff like that
So
going on.
when you learn about all this stuff and you think about all your pets, and I mean, you can get quite a few people gathering around you, interested in your life. And there are times when, in the physical world, we think we want privacy.
Hmm.
So I take it we just got to get over that because it doesn't sound like there is such a thing
Well,
non-physically.
there's no judgment, so they don't. What do you need privacy for?
Well,
If you were in a world without judgment, you nothing.
yeah,
There's
but now I feel more like I didn't realize that many people were watching. I mean, I know it must be spectacular, but no, I'm just
yeah,
kidding. Just
Yeah, but you know what, Steve? I think the difference is that when you want privacy, you want to be able to do things that you want to do. You don't want people interfering, and you don't want to be responsible for in any way for making them happy or being subject to criticism. In some sense, it's fear-based, but in some sense, it's not. And when we're dealing with the non-physical, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we're dealing with the non-physical, while they're there and they're always on our side, they're not there to interfere with us. And because we still have our free will, so if we truly just want to relax and be with our own thoughts, we can do it.
right. You can totally do it. Also, the thing to think about in the non-physical, there is no privacy. You're you can't keep your thoughts to yourself. You're always flowing with the thoughts of everyone else, and everyone knows what everyone else is thinking. There's nothing to hide. So,
Right. Well, we're also
yep,
not thinking the negative thoughts, so we're
yep,
not
right,
thinking, "Oh, that's so and so, who
right,
cheated me out of blah blah blah."
yep, yep. Because there's just no fear. Here's a quote that Joshua wrote: "If you can get to the point where you no longer fear death, where you see death as a transition and not an ending, you radically reduce the intensity of fear in your life, because ultimately all fears are tied to the fear of death. So once you no longer fear death, you really have nothing to fear."
Oh, and I believe that. At various points, earlier on in my career, when I was afraid, that I might lose my job. And ultimately, we've discussed this. My fear of homelessness.
Yeah,
It's ultimately a death fear.
sure. Everything like that is a fear of loss or separation or change. I
Right,
think
and
those
it's
are the
and
three
right and
fears. Maybe
right.
I think there's a fourth fear, but I think that's, and then death is just the summation of those three fears.
Right. Yeah,
Yep.
we're all afraid that at the end of the day that we're going to be alone. And that thing, alone in the, involuntary sense, not the sense where we're looking for privacy.
Right.
That we're going to be alone. We're going to be separated. We're not going to be able to take part in the world as we know it, in the joy that we know of, or that we've sought, and that there's nothing else.
I think I've definitely moved past that.
Yeah, me too. I can see the people who are alone are people who are so fed up with feeling bad that they want to leave other people out of it because they believe that other people are responsible for them feeling bad, and they want to just check out.
I feel like I've totally I'm okay with my own death. I can almost say that at some point I see it as a great adventure, right? I'm like,
Mm,
wow, like I would be so excited, right? But I do want to extend as much time as I can here. But I still am really attached to, especially close family members. There's no way
right.
I'd am I okay with them as much as I learn about this, right? It's like I'm greedy and I want to be able to physically just hug them and squeeze them,
Right.
that kind of
Yep.
thing. And that's
Hmm.
Right.
that's probably the biggest thing is that you miss that physicalness.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Or as Janine says, hugs, everybody.
Yes, so you should take advantage of that while you're physical and just hug everybody you know.
definitely.
Right.
So another thing that people ask about is, what happens to them when they die, and the biggest thing is that there's no judgment. So no matter what happened in your life, it doesn't matter. You get a time to reflect on it if you want, but nobody cares. Everything was good. There's no bad. There's no wrong. So um, no matter, there's no regrets at all, and there's nothing you need to accomplish in this life to get to heaven. It's all heaven. Um, it's all heaven here if you perceive it that way too. So
So many people have issues with that too.
so many people do.
Yeah.
Oh, of
Yep.
course.
But they're not looking at it like like if somebody was signed up in a play to murder somebody, nobody would want to hold them accountable. Oh my God, you're a terrible person, right? But
Yeah.
that's essentially what's going on. It's from that higher perspective. It is a play, and you're
Right.
just playing it out. And the person who's getting murdered signed up for that role. You know,
Yep.
Right.
you can just see him prior to this incarnation, all gathered around, going, "Okay, who's signed up for this? Who's signing up for this?"
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Well, a great example of that was recently when they, about 2, 3 years ago, when they discovered a gospel according to Judas. And, the Catholic Church went crazy about it and said this is a complete forgery and so on and so forth, as did many more neutral scholars. But the concept behind it was amazing. And the concept was that the only true, the most truly advanced of Jesus's disciples was, in fact, Judas. And that Jesus, really needed him to go betray him and told him, you have to do this because it's part of my drama.
Right. Yeah, and without that ending, the whole teachings would be missed by a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Right. So here you have, so it's contrary to the Catholic Church teaching and other Christian teachings. And I'm not, folks here who are Catholic, I'm not trying to target you or belittle your beliefs. But the point of most of the, of the Gospels that are considered part of the canon, that are part of the New Testament, the Gospels of Mark, Jesus, Matthew, and Mark, Luke, Matthew, and John, is the concept that the apotheosis of the religion, it was in fact the apotheosis, where Jesus rises from the dead, and that's the separation, that's the difference between everything that had happened before and afterwards. But you couldn't get to that point without the Judas character as playing his part of the drama.
Right.
Okay, I need to know what that apotheosis is.
Well, the rising from the dead.
Oh, okay. I just figured if I didn't know it, maybe there's other people out there who didn't know what that was.
I didn't know.
Sorry, guys.
We're not the scholar that you are.
I didn't know it. Once in a while, like when I'm doing channeling Joshua, that usually it's the thoughts that come and they're my own words, but a lot of the times there'll be specific words will be inserted, and I'll have to look them up to see what they mean. It's pretty interesting.
You'll write down a word you don't know
Yeah,
the meaning of it.
I know a lot of words, so it's rare.
Yeah, but I just didn't
yeah.
know that. I always figured that the thought came in, and then you selected from your store of
Vocabulary.
Of vocabulary. Yeah, so
And 90% of that is there. It's just these certain phrases that are meant to be word for word that come in about 10% of the time.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
yeah. Let's see
Hey,
if there's one.
and if nothing else, by the time you leave this physical world, you'll be ready to take the verbal SAT again.
And we talk about league.
That joke went nowhere quickly. Okay,
I'm sorry.
you can't win them all.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that we tend to forget that we're non-physical now.
Right.
And it's like you don't have to wait till all these things that we say about people being dead. It's technically
We're non-physical now.
Yeah, so I can talk to the non-physical Gary, right now.
Right. You
Non-physical
can talk
Michael.
to my inner self right now.
Yeah.
We can have conversations between me and your inner self now, but I wonder if I can communicate with you now without a phone.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
I think I can communicate with your inner self, and I think I can get answers, but I don't think that you'll remember or be able to.
Right.
Maybe you will.
Right,
Maybe in the
right.
future.
Unless the emotions are so high, like where a mother senses something bad has happened to a child.
Yeah.
It's got to be at that very heightened sense of. I think it's got to be at that very heightened sense of emotional.
Unless we practice it, and maybe if we practice it,
right.
I wonder if Eastern religions have practiced stuff like this. I wonder if Buddhists or monks have ever practiced this stuff and gotten good at it. Okay, what's our time limit?
We got about 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, good. Well, we're going to be on a cruise in the week after next. So we'll have one show next Saturday. Is that right? And then I'm leaving the Saturday after that?
Yep.
Cool. That's going to be fun.
Looking
We may
forward to
skip a show here. Or we may do 2 shows in one day or something.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, that might be fun. We'll have 2 different subjects. I mean, this is 60 minutes has gone by already, and it seems like nothing.
I hope our listeners have as much fun as we have.
I think they do. Yeah, because we're pretty authentic. But anyway, there are last-minute tickets available to the Law of Attraction Cruise. Just go to loaradionetwork.com, and you can find out all about it. So if anyone wants to do that. Also, anyone who wants to ask a question, I'm now doing a nice one-on-one with Kate, who lives in Paris, and that's going along really cool. She's asked 4 really unbelievable questions so far, and I can just see this unfolding. But anyone can ask a question anytime, and sometimes we'll put them on the air, maybe. So go to theteachingsofjoshua.com, and there's so much free stuff there. Also, get both books because they are really the foundation of all of this stuff, which is life-altering. So you guys, I had a great time. I hope you did too. This was not a bad topic at all. It turned out to be a lot of fun.
It was.
People think, it should change your idea of death. And so those who die around you, it's not a bad thing after all. Until next week, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'm going to go win another poker tournament.
You do that. Get back to us during the week. Let us know. Inquiring minds, in the words of the National Enquirer, inquiring minds want to know.
So the World Series of Poker was here last week. I got 2 free tickets to the first event. I ended up cashing in that. So I won $1,000 and then got the refund of my other ticket because I didn't need it. Then I used that ticket to enter another event, came in 3rd place, won $6,700, and then got a free ticket to the main event and was the chip leader after day 1 and got to 40th place, which was about $3,500. So for 6 or 7 days, I made $11,000.
Very nice.
Pretty cool. Yep, did better than all of my friends.
That's
and knocked out a couple really famous pros too, which was a lot of fun. Fun for me, not for them. They were like, what happened? But so you guys have a great week, and we will talk again soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Fantastic. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Teachings of Joshua Roundtable with Gary Temple Bodley. We will be back next week with another fun discussion. If you would like to ask Joshua a question or read more of Joshua's teachings, please visit us at theteachingsofjoshua.com. See you next week.